So in a parallelogram, which is essentially, I always think about it as a rectangle that is sort of slanted. We know that opposite angles, which are the angles directly across from each other, those are opposite, and they are congruent, which means the same, and those are also opposite and congruent. So the correct answer would have been A. So if we know that opposite angles are congruent, we also know or have learned that opposite sides are congruent. So that means this is congruent to this, which means that y has to equal 23, right? So we already know that it's that answer, but also this opposite side is congruent to that opposite side. So that means x equals 10. So B would have been the correct answer. If ABCD is a parallelogram, what is the length of BD? So parallelogram means opposite sides are congruent, opposite angles are congruent, and then the diagonals, this is a diagonal, and this is the other diagonal. They bisect each other, and bisect means to cut in half. So if they cut each other in half, that means that if BE, which is labeled 5, if it's 5, that means ED is 5, right? Because it's cut in half, and two halves are congruent. So if BE is 5, then ED is 5. Therefore, the length of BD, which is what this is asking for, would be 5 plus 5. Therefore, A would have been the correct answer. Again, this is a parallelogram, and we know that opposite angles are congruent. So that means if this is 70 degrees, that's 70 degrees. But right now, the diagonal is the diagonal is cutting through the angles. So this means that the opposite angles are congruent is how I always remember it. So if this is 30, then this has to be 30. So x equals 30, and if this is 40, then the opposite angle is 40, so y equals 40. So that means that D would have been the correct answer. And number 5, so again, same properties, right? Parallelogram, there's a diagonal, and we have some angles. So we know that opposite angles are congruent, so that means if that's 80, then that's also 80. I just like to label it because I know that that's true. And therefore, if this is 70, then the angle that is opposite is 70, so that means x will be 70. And then to figure out what y is, well, this triangle, right, the singular triangle, if we redrew it over here, let's say we drew it like this. We know that this is 70 and this is 80. So then what is y? It's a terrible 7. Well, we know that a triangle has 180 degrees in it. So if we took 180 and subtracted the other two angles, we'll get the third angle. So 180 minus 70 minus 80 is going to be 30 degrees. Therefore, y has to be 30 degrees. So the correct answer would have been x equals 70, y equals 30. Just right there.